I still remember the exact second the world went silent. The screech of tires, the shatter of glass, and then nothing. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears and the tiny, desperate cry of my newborn son in the back seat. My name is Alina. I was 26, 3 weeks postpartum, and driving home from a late-night pharmacy run when a speeding truck ran the red light. One moment I was humming to keep my baby calm. The next metal was folding around us like paper. When the paramedics pulled me out, my left arm was broken, my ribs cracked, and blood was running down the side of my face. But the only thing I kept screaming was, "My baby, please, is my baby okay?" They placed him in my good arm for 3 precious seconds before the gurney took me away. He was perfect. Tiny fists, soft dark hair, and those same brown eyes that looked exactly like mine. I named him Noah the day he was born. He was the only pure thing left in my life. After months of silence from the people who were supposed to love me most, my parents had barely spoken to me since the day I told them I was pregnant. They said I had shamed the family. They said I should have handled it quietly. When Noah arrived, they didn't come to the hospital. They didn't send flowers. They didn't even call. I told myself they just needed time. I told myself that once they saw his face, everything would change. That night in the emergency room, with machines beeping and nurses rushing past, my voice was shaking when I said the words, "Dad, there was an accident. I'm hurt. Noah is here with me. Please, I need you." There was a long pause on the other end. Then my mother's voice, cold and distant. "Alina, you made your choices. Don't expect us to clean up your mess." I felt something inside me crack wider than any broken bone. But what I didn't know that day was that the real betrayal hadn't even begun yet. Hours later, while I lay in a hospital bed with tubes in my arm and Noah sleeping in a clear plastic bassinet beside me, the door to my room opened. I looked up, hoping, praying it was them. It wasn't.
The first nurse who checked on me that night said my parents had actually come to the hospital. They had stood outside my room for almost 10 minutes. Then they turned around and left without walking in. When I heard that, something inside me went completely still. I kept staring at the door, waiting for it to open again, waiting for them to change their minds, waiting for the mother who used to braid my hair and the father who used to carry me on his shoulders, to remember that I was still their daughter. They never did. Instead, a social worker came in the next morning. She spoke gently, but her words felt like ice. "Your parents have formally declined to take temporary custody or provide any support for the child. While you recover, we're going to need another plan." I laughed. It was a broken, ugly sound. "They declined?" She nodded. "They said they want nothing to do with the situation." I looked at Noah sleeping with one tiny hand curled near his cheek. 3 weeks old, completely dependent on me, and the people who raised me had just shut the door on both of us. That night I cried until my ribs screamed. I held my son against my chest with my good arm and whispered, promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "I will never leave you. I will never turn away from you. You are not a mess. You are my everything." But the pain kept growing. Every time a nurse asked if I had family coming, I had to say no. Every time another mother in the hallway laughed with her parents, I felt smaller. The shame sat on my chest like a second set of broken ribs. I started questioning everything. Was I really so unlovable that even my own blood could walk away from my child? Had I failed so completely that they would rather erase us than help? 2 days later, while I was still unable to walk without help, a nurse told me someone was asking for me at the front desk. My heart jumped. Maybe they had come back. Maybe the coldness had been shock. I asked her to bring them up. When the door opened, it wasn't my mother or father. It was a tall, silver-haired man in a dark coat, holding a small blue gift bag and looking at me with eyes that were wet with tears. The man my parents had kept from me for almost 3 years. He walked straight into the room without hesitation, set the bag down and looked at Noah. Then he looked at me. His voice was quiet but steady. "I just found out," he said. "They never told me you had the baby. They never told me about the accident. I had to hear it from a neighbor. I couldn't speak." He sat on the edge of the bed, took my hand carefully, and said the words I had been starving for. I'm here. And I'm not leaving. That was the moment everything began to change. Over the next week, Grandpa barely left my side. He held Noah when my arms were too tired. He spoke to the doctors. He signed papers so I wouldn't lose custody while I recovered. He brought warm soup and soft blankets and the kind of quiet strength I had forgotten existed. But he also started asking questions. Why had my parents hidden the pregnancy from him? Why had they refused to help their own grandchild? Why had they told the hospital they wanted no involvement whatsoever? The answers came slowly, and they were uglier than I expected. My parents had been counting on an inheritance from Grandpa. They believed that if they cut me and my mistake out of the family, the money would stay clean and undivided. They had already spoken to a lawyer. They had already begun quietly moving assets. They thought Grandpa was too old and too distant to ever find out. They were wrong. One afternoon, while I was finally strong enough to sit in a chair and feed Noah, Grandpa walked into the room holding a thick folder. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a storm. "I called them," he said. "They're coming." I felt my stomach drop. When my parents entered the room, they looked surprised to see him. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw tightened. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He simply placed the folder on the small table and spoke with a quiet finality that filled the entire space. "You shut the door on your daughter and your grandson. You lied to me. You tried to erase them for money. That ends today." He told them the trust had been rewritten. Every plan they had made was now worthless. He told them that if they ever tried to contact me or Noah again without my permission, he would make the entire truth public. Every message, every refusal, every cold word they had spoken in the hospital hallway. My mother tried to speak. My father tried to argue. Grandpa simply looked at them and said, "You chose this. Now live with it." They left without another word. The door closed behind them, and this time it stayed closed. I sat there holding my son, tears running down my face, not from pain this time, but from something that felt almost like freedom. Grandpa came and sat beside me. He rested one large hand gently on Noah's back and the other on my shoulder. "You are not alone," he said. "You never were. They just tried to make you believe you were." In the weeks that followed, the silence from my parents became permanent. No calls, no messages, no sudden change of heart. And for the first time, that silence didn't hurt. I learned that some doors are meant to stay shut, and some people, like the silver-haired man who walked straight into my hospital room when everyone else turned away, are meant to open new ones. Noah is 2 years old now. He has Grandpa's laugh and my stubbornness. We live in a small house with sunlight in the mornings and no room for people who only love us when it's convenient.